I can tell. It will be. Okay, let's call this meeting of the Temecula City Council to order. It's a budget workshop, as I think we all know. I assume the mics are on, yeah? Okay, everybody have a mic and we're good? Yeah. Okay, with that, let's open up with the flag salute that's going to be led this morning by Council Member Matt Ron.
Ready? Hand over your heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Matt. Madam Clerk, why don't we start with the roll call?
Here.
Yeah. Oh, a good day to do a budget.
Here.
I'm here as well. Do we have any public comment on this portion?
We do. We have one public comment from Wayne.
Very good. Mr. Hall?
Could we make that under capital improvement?
We can do that, certainly.
I didn't mark that.
That's okay, no problem. Okay, so then we have no other public comment, correct? Okay, we have essentially two items under council business this morning. We're going to reverse the order. We're going to reorient the agenda a little bit. It just seems to make more sense for flow to do number 2 first, a review of the proposed fiscal year's capital improvement program. So we're going to start with that. And with that, Mr. Adams, you want to lead us off?
Great. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The agenda for today will include an overview of the 5-year CIP, introduction of our draft operating budget for fiscal year 15-16, the Temecula Community Services District operating budget, and discussion on 5-year strategic planning. But before we launch into the budget workshop slides, I wanted to share some current demographic information for the city. And of course, these numbers do play a significant role in our local economy and our local budget. Recently published from Nielsen Reports as well as Southwest Riverside County Board of Realty, the following profile for our city has been created. Our current population numbers are just under 109,000, and this is a 2.5% increase from 2014. The median age in Temecula remains 34 years. The number of households is just under 34,000. This is up 1% from 2014. The 2015 average household income is listed as just under $86,000, and this is up 6.3% from the previous year.
Wow.
In 2015, April of this year, the median home price in Temecula was listed at $452,000. This is also up 6% from March of last year. And the number of jobs assigned to the city of Temecula for 2015 is just over 49,000. And again, this is also up 15% from a year ago. And another encouraging trend that we're pleased to report is April's unemployment rate, which for Temecula is listed at 4.5%. Wow. And this is down from a year ago at 5.6. And how we compare with the surrounding area, Riverside County in April was listed at 6.2. The state was listed at 6.1, and the nation was listed at 5.1. So again, this is a very encouraging trend. I think it's important to state that our local economy continues to improve and show very positive and encouraging growth in many areas. This morning we'll be presenting a very healthy, albeit tighter operating budget with reserves funded for economic uncertainty. We will also be presenting a very enviable capital improvement budget based on available sources of one-time revenue. Yet we have an obligation to also share a sobering forecast of items that must remain on our radar as an organization as we continue to program and plan over the next 60 months. Interestingly, many of these items we will be discussing later in the presentation are challenges currently outside our span of control. For example, public safety rate increases and gas tax and development revenue declines. However, we commit to remaining proactive in our recommendations today and in the future. The proposed fiscal year 15-16 operating budget and CIP has been drafted to be in line with the 6 core values of the City Council, adopted Quality of Life Master Plan from 2011. And as we celebrated 25 years of cityhood, we are beginning to shift some of our focus to be more concentrated on maintenance while still preserving the high quality of life we have all enjoyed. And with that, the Capital Improvement Program is a comprehensive planning document that will identify and prioritize major capital improvement projects over the next 5 years. A majority of the proposed capital projects are funded with one-time revenue sources that are not reoccurring. It is extremely important that the appropriate level of effort is expended to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of these one-time dollars. There are a total of 50 projects proposed in the CIP that include traffic circulation, public facilities, parks projects, and a placeholder for available housing funds administered by the SARTA, or the successor agency to the former RDA. There is approximately $454 million in project costs within the CIP. $321 million represents the cost to complete. $132.7 million has been previously spent on the listed projects. But as you can see, we have identified $221.8 million in funded CIP projects for the term of the 5-year, of which 22.9 has been appropriated in fiscal year 15-16, and 49.7 million will be carried over from prior years. As depicted on the chart, 87% of the project costs are identified for circulation improvements, representing nearly $281 million. There are 25 infrastructure projects identified and 8 park and recreation projects identified. Some of the major traffic circulation improvement projects include the French Valley Parkway Interchange Phase 2. The total project costs are $216 million. We have identified approximately 1/3 of the needed funding and will remain diligent on securing the balance, including heavy lobbying at the federal level of a multi-year transportation bill. We are also in talks with Caltrans about phasing strategies that can be considered by the city to evaluate in the future delivery of this important regional project. The design of the I-15-79 South Interchange is 100% complete. Construction funding has been secured with regional dollars and now represents a $50.6 million fully funded infrastructure project. We hope to be out to bid on this project by December and under construction after the first of the year, with the expected time to complete about 18 months. Marietta Creek Bridge and Overland Drive Extension, $10.6 million of the $19.3 million needed has been secured. The right-of-way has also been secured for this project, and staff is pursuing a Federal Highway Bridge Program grant, which represents the last piece of this capital project. Other notable projects include Citywide Pavement Rehabilitation Program, which continues our ongoing investment in our road network and includes about $1 million in new Measure A funds, which will supplement approximately $6.3 million we are carrying over from last year. Specific improvements are scheduled for Old Town Front Street from First Street to Temecula Parkway, Temecula Parkway from I-15 to Pechanga Parkway, and Margarita Road Phase 1 from Rancho Cal to Paba Road, which is a $2 million Phase 1. And also Traffic Signal Equipment Replacement Program. This is ongoing year to year. There are also 25 infrastructure projects with over $28.9 million in costs, most notably citywide sidewalks, bike lane and trail program, city facility rehabilitation, library parking Phase 2. The library parking Phase 2 is a $2.8 million project, which includes the addition of a parking lot northwest of the existing lot to accommodate one of our heaviest traffic facilities. The Temecula Park and Ride on La Paz. This is a $2.7 million project primarily funded through CMAQ funds, and we expect this project to be, we have to have this project under construction by December of this year. The former YMCA repair and remediation. We have earmarked $1.5 million for the remediation of this facility to begin this fiscal year. We are expecting to be out to bid this summer. Evaluation of disabled access to city facilities. We have earmarked $350,000 to begin analyzing facilities and the public right-of-way plan. Fire Station 73 living quarters. This is a $1.8 million facility upgrade, and construction is underway now and expected to be complete in fiscal year 15-16. As a reminder, last year at this time, we advanced about $817,000 from the general fund to make this project whole, and it will be repaid through future development impact fees to fire. The community theater remediation, this is a $3.8 million facility upgrade. It is also underway and expected to be complete this fall. $2.8 million of this was received by the city through a legal settlement. Some of the park and recreation projects, we have a total of 8, totaling $6.6 million. Some of the notable projects include Penny Pickles Workshop Exhibit, Park Improvement Program citywide, and playground equipment and safety enhancements. And it's important for me to note, in recent conversations I've had with Mayor Comachero, staff was directed to create a playground equipment replacement manual that would take advantage of maintenance opportunities to replace with new or innovative structures subject to fiscal resources. This park inventory maintenance exercise has begun and is expected to be complete this summer. Sam Hicks Monument Park playground replacement. This project will largely be funded through just over $600,000 in community development block grant funding, and the design build agreement was recently approved by the City Council. We expect the fabrication to begin on the Great Oak themed structure this summer, with completion and installation by the fall of 2016. There are a few new CIP projects that have been added this year. City Hall exterior LED lighting. For some time, we have had the need to rent specialty lighting to honor or acknowledge monthly awareness events such as breast cancer, domestic violence, or autism, or just to showcase decorative lighting for special events and holidays. This capital purchase will eliminate the need to continue to rent and provide ownership options for other special events utilizing this building with a decorative backdrop. We estimate the cost of this about $67,000. The Emergency Operations Center improvements, with the need to outfit the Civic Center appropriately as a primary EOC, we have received a grant for $42,000 of the project costs, and the city would be required to pledge an additional $75,000 towards the ultimate improvements. As a reminder, we have an Emergency Operations Center located at Station 84, the Community Recreation Center, and on this side of the freeway, of course, here at the Civic Center. And lastly, theater LED lighting. In what has been a multi-year effort to reduce energy at the theater, this conversion is proposed to be completed this year at a cost of just a little over $30,000. The successor agency to the redevelopment agency, this is a CIP placeholder project that includes $5.2 million of affordable housing funds. It is important to note that these are 2010 bond proceeds available to the city as a result of the State Department of Finance confirming the city's successful wind down of its RDA. We have yet to identify an affordable housing project to program these funds, but we intend to issue an RFP next month in June, soliciting interested parties and development projects. The proposed CIP program was presented to the Community Services Commission on May 11th, the Planning Commission on May 20th, and will be presented tomorrow evening at the Public Traffic Safety Commission. Formal adoption of the final CIP budget by the City Council is slated for Tuesday, June 9. At this time, we are available to answer any questions with respect to the proposed CIP.
Thank you, Aaron. Let's make sure, since we have speakers here, that we confine this discussion right now to questions of staff only. Then let's listen to the speakers, and then we can get into discussion. Mike?
Thank you. Aaron, on the park and ride facility, are we, I didn't catch it, are we funded on that, or are we still looking?
No,
for
we're funded on that primarily through, I believe, CMAQ funding, which is a grant, and subject to air quality reduction, emission reduction. And that is a time-sensitive project that needs to be under construction by December.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there questions of staff? Okay, let's go ahead and do we have the one
Jeff.
speaker?
Just
Yeah,
a real
go
quick
ahead.
one. On the improvements to like the theater for LED lighting and so forth, do you know what the return on investment is for those types of upgrades?
I don't know, Kevin, do you or Tom have a? We can look that up and bring that back.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, because for future upgrades or throughout the city, if we can realize a more rapid return, then it might be worth considering in future budget years to allocate funds toward those types of programs.
Absolutely.
Let's remember too that any questions that come out of this workshop today that cannot be answered today, we'll certainly get the answers, and we have the opportunity to bring those up and discuss them further when they come forward at the regular council meeting. Mac?
Thank you, sir. The evaluation of disabled access, do we have a inventory list or a priority we want to approach those by?
I think the way we're going to tackle this is we will be, or we have solicited, I believe, RFP for consultants to sort of work on our behalf and evaluate all of our city-owned facilities. And what I envision happening is hopefully most of our city facilities, if not all of them, are ADA compliant with the changes in law and that sort of thing. But if there are deficient in areas, that's going to come out through this consultant study, and that's what the $350,000 is programmed for.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Kevin, I just wanted you to notice that since Aaron is wearing a community services shirt, this may be the time to ask for a few more dollars.
You know, always.
Only kidding, of course.
I do have one more question, Jeff.
Yeah, Marion.
Have we made any provisions in the budget for increase in water for all of our park maintenance or anything?
Yeah, I believe we took that into account to the best of our ability as far as utilities, and that'll be factored into the operating budget, not the CIP, but
Right.
yeah. And I think it's important to note too that Kevin Harrington and his staff have done an amazing proactive job over the last few years in getting our irrigation controllers, rain sensor technology into our park system and reclaim water where we can. So we're about as far ahead as we could be, and so hopefully we won't see the big spikes that are being discussed in terms of our water bills and things of that nature. But we're going to monitor that closely.
Okay.
Okay, Randy, do we still have just one speaker?
Just the one
Okay,
speaker,
please
Wayne.
call Wayne again. Wayne?
Good morning.
Morning. Ooh.
This morning, my wife said to me as I left the house, "Good luck, Don Quixote." I'm
That's
like
the
a
way to
pit bull
set
of the
the
bone.
stage.
We're talking about an aquatic center. And yes, I know there's a drought. I've been through 5 droughts. I've been here even before the 15 freeway. Yes, time moves on. Things get better, things get worse. The upside is we're going to get better and the economy will pick up. When? Well, I'm not a genie. I'm here to talk about Aquatic Center. Now, most people think, well, it doesn't bring in a lot of people, it doesn't bring in a lot of money. I thought the same thing until I went up to Redlands the other day. Well, it was actually 3 months ago. It was packed. Munchkins this tall everywhere. You couldn't walk straight without bumping into one. And their parents were there, and some of them were living, it's a 2-day event. They stayed in hotels in town, did their thing, and then they went home Sunday evening. I said the word munchkins for a purpose. They're teenagers, they're preteens, and that's where most of these swim teams are geared at. What about the teens? Did you know that more than half of the swimmers in these teams are little girls, females? My point is, if you don't build it, they will not come. Here's another thing. As I went by the sports park, which is a fine job, I go by there and I have pride in my heart. All the little kids are out there playing baseball, and before that they were playing soccer, and before that they were probably playing football and some other stuff. The sport of swimming is not a seasonal thing. It's year-round. They swim out there when it's cold and when it's hot. They take time off occasionally, but it's a year-round sport, and it's packed. So the idea that it doesn't draw enough people, well, because they're about full right now. When I was up in Chino Hills, the place was packed. And one of the biggest things was, well, when they get up to teen age, they go to high school. Well, the high schools are packed with their own stuff. What I'm talking about is preteens, teens, Junior Olympics. Is that such a thing here in Temecula? Yes, it is. We've got a couple Olympians here in Temecula. Where do they practice at? Well, one of them's a bicyclist. Never try and catch that old girl. You're not going to catch her. My point is, we need a place for platform diving and for Olympic pools, for the simple reason is that once you get of a certain age, the rules change and you do certain and different things. And without an Olympic-sized pool, it ain't going to happen here in Temecula. Now, I know that we're close to build-out. I recognize that. And I recognize the point that it is expensive, these pools. Oh, yeah, we're talking as up to $20 million with all the bones and whistles and bells thrown in it, with the cover over it. Well, if I'm going to dream, I want to dream big. Just like some people here in Temecula, when we first started our city, we dreamed big. All I ask is that we start a little plan. You know how some of our people find money out there, but they have a plan in their hand. They go out there and say, well, we have money if you've got some type of basic idea what you want. You want a pre-plan. I don't know what it's called, but and somehow the city manager and his tricksters over there always plop one down and we want that money. We got it. We're ready for it. All I ask is the same thing for this Olympic-sized pool with a platform. We have two little girls that drive all the way to Riverside and a Carlsbad to practice their platform driving. If you can get 2, you can get 4. If you can get 4, you can get a dozen. I'm just asking you, can we get a plan set up on paper? I don't want a lot of money spent on it, but at least something that we can say, one day we might have an aquatic center here where people will come to us instead of we going to Chino Hills and Carlsbad and Redlands. We have it here in my hometown. You ought to see these little kids. Most of these little girls and guys are hyper. They have a lot of energy. And when they get done swimming and all that, they go right to bed and parents are going, oh, break time. Just like I was when I was a little kid. I had to climb mountains around here. And I've rambled on enough, but please keep this in mind, if you would, for the future, for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I might just add that we have this discussion often. It's not a new discussion, as you know. And we have had that preliminary investigation of what it would take to build it. To date, I have to admit and be honest that the cost of building an Olympic facility with a 50-meter pool just doesn't seem to work for the number of people that it would benefit. And while I would love to have it built, and it is my hope that someday we will, but right now, given the economics of building it, again, for the number, it would be wonderful to have 2 or 4 or 10 or 100 Olympians from Temecula. But even with that, the $20 million cost, and it's not just the cost, it's the ongoing maintenance every year, very expensive. It's just hard to justify. So I agree with what you're saying, and I thank you for bringing it forward, and we'll always continue to look at it. Thank you, Wayne. And no other speakers on that? Okay, council discussion on the capital improvement program. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good CIP. I really don't have any comment. It looks like it's comprehensive, and there's some exciting things that are about to begin. I just wanted to bring something to the council's attention and staff's attention. The county of Riverside has been struggling with something in their general plan called the Highway 79 policy area. They've been having stakeholder meetings. On one hand, it's in their general plan and they don't want to change it. On the other hand, it's requiring the development community to do certain things that really in many ways can't be done anymore. So there's a conundrum. So in these stakeholder meetings, they're trying to find ways where the development community can contribute to things that would support transportation projects, and that they can contribute to. It would do two things. It would mitigate traffic impacts in the 79 policy area, and it would fulfill the requirements of the general plan in the county of Riverside. One of the topics that came up were a couple of examples here in Temecula. The Harvest and Shuttle was one. And another example was developers funding these park and rides. And that's why I asked that question. I believe that if you call Juan Perez down at the county, there is a list of developers that are looking for some way to meet their Highway 79 policy requirements. And the county is looking for projects like park and rides that to put them into so that requirement can be met. And these talks are very fresh. So Juan will know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
I asked you if we're funded, and you said that we are. So maybe, how did Mr. Hall put it in a very, what did you say, tricky city manager type stuff?
Tricksters.
Yeah, maybe you move whatever funds we have somewhere else. Maybe however you want to handle it. Anyway, if it works.
No, we'll follow up with Mr. Perez for
All
sure.
right.
That's a positive lead.
Yeah, very much so.
Mike, so I'm clear, are you saying that even though it's funded, we might have the opportunity to bring developers in to build it on their nickel? 'Cause they need it?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. In fact, there's the development community right now is searching that whole region, okay, for vacant land so that they can buy it, do a park and ride, or invest in a sort of a CSA, community service area for a shuttle or something.
Interesting.
But nobody's set it up yet.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Could be a little windfall.
absolutely, yeah. And they're ready to do it.
There could be also opportunities to partner with RTA on some enhanced public transit stops and facilities and things of that nature too. So if the goal is to getting people out of their cars as part of the mitigation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Park and rides, freeway projects, bus projects. Metrolink is opening up in Paris, so any way you can get people in Temecula in a bus down to Paris, anything of that nature, there's developer money out there to do that.
Okay.
It's interesting, Aaron, you bring up RTA in that context. We know that RTA is moving forward with the transit center at the property in North Jefferson, looks like. That's where it will be. And similar, at RTA, it's fully funded, predominantly with CUM funds. But is there an opportunity to bring maybe a group of developers there who have to meet a requirement to help fund a portion of that and free up some of those funds at RTA? As long as we can keep that money local, that would be terrific. So anyway, it's a good discussion. Anything else on the CIP?
Nope, not right now.
We ready to
Okay, we'll
accept it?
We'll launch into.
Well, it's a separate item. Why don't we, do we need a vote?
Sure, we'll take a
Why don't we,
roll call vote on
why don't we vote
support
for
as
the,
drafted.
it's still a draft, but, so I guess the motion would be to accept the draft and bring it forward to the council.
So moved. Second.
I think we have a motion by Mr. Nagar, second by Mary Ann, and Mike was in there somewhere, but, anyway, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so, good job again, as always. And then we'll take, item one, which is now item two. Review of fiscal year 2015-16 preliminary annual operating budget. So,
And thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce our finance director, Jennifer Hennessy. She will provide an overview of the operating budget for fiscal year 15-16.
Okay. Good morning. The general fund, which serves as the primary operating fund for the city, is structurally balanced with revenues exceeding expenditures by $488,000 for fiscal year 15-16. The budget is relatively flat compared to 14-15, with the revenue estimated to be $65.8 million, which is a 1% growth rate over the prior year. Expenditures are projected at $65.3 million, or 2.2% over the prior year. The general fund transfers money to pay for priority projects with no other eligible funding source. For 15-16, this amount totals $1.2 million, with an additional $420,000 dedicated to the rehabilitation of city parks and facilities. The general fund is also contributing $250,000 to the workers' compensation fund to meet our self-insured retention of $500,000. The transfer to the Business Incubator Fund is higher than in prior years, as we are now reflecting staff's cost for the management and oversight of this venture. A corresponding reduction is reflected in the Economic Development Department within the general fund. Finally, the city continues to fund the intern fellowship program with a transfer of just under $20,000. The general fund is projected to end the year with $22.7 million in fund balance. Reserves per city policy are fully funded, with the reserve for economic uncertainty funded at $13 million and the secondary reserve funded at $3.2 million. With $1 million earmarked for capital projects for next fiscal year, total available fund balance is projected to be $5.3 million. This balance is available for one-time expenditures as opposed to ongoing operations. Later in this presentation, you will see a slide that illustrates how quickly this available fund balance is absorbed as expenditures are anticipated to rise dramatically in the coming years. As shown in the pie chart, sales tax makes up nearly half, or 48% of total revenue. Other revenues, which include reimbursements from the CIP for administration costs, make up 12%. Intergovernmental revenue, which is predominantly property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees, generates 11% of total revenue, and an additional 11% comes from the collection of property taxes on homes and businesses. TOT, which has been on the rise, will contribute 5% for 15-16. The budget process begins each year in February with a projection of revenues, which serves as the foundation for the development of the operating budget. To begin this process, staff analyzes each major revenue source independently, as each have different factors influencing their growth. We review economic trends and adjust for local anomalies, such as new businesses or developments projected to occur during the year. In addition, we receive projections from the city's consultants for both sales and property taxes. For fiscal year 15-16, several key revenue sources are continuing to increase. However, shifts in two major development projects will offset most of this growth. Property tax is expected to increase by 5.6% over the prior year due to a combination of increased home values, new home inventories, and the recapture of property tax from the homes that received value reductions during the recession. The city's largest revenue source, sales tax, is projected to grow at a modest 2%. The point of sale, however, is projected at a 5% growth rate, but it's being offset by a one-time prior year adjustment. We're seeing strong growth in auto sales, building and construction, and general consumer goods, which are contributing to the growth of the local economy. TOT has been trending between 10 and 11% growth in recent months due to both higher room rates and occupancy. It's anticipated that this positive trend will continue next fiscal year. Intergovernmental revenues, which reflects property tax in lieu of VLF and increases along with overall assessed value, is growing at a rate of 4.2% next year. And operating transfers in reflect gas tax funds that are required to be receipted into a separate fund, but are then transferred to the general fund to pay for street and road maintenance. The total gas tax is decreasing in fiscal year 15-16 due to falling gas prices and adjustments made at the state level. Other revenues, which contain the development-related permit fees, are decreasing by 8.6% due to the delay of the Altair and the Rorapah residential projects. Overall, the trend in revenue is relatively flat, with a modest 1% growth over a fiscal year 14-15. Nearly 50% of the general fund resources are dedicated to public safety, with police allocated 39% and fire allocated just under 10% net of the fire tax credit. Public works, which includes CIP administration, parks maintenance, and land development, make up 19% of the total budget, at a budget of $12.6 million. The CIP admin is fully reimbursed from eligible capital projects and is reflected as a general fund revenue. Administration, which includes the city manager's office, economic development, finance, HR, city attorney, city clerk, and council, total 11% of the general fund budget. Community development, including planning and building and safety, receives 7% of the general fund with a budget of $4.4 million. And the contribution to TCSD, which is part of the non-departmental category, is $5.6 million for next fiscal year. As the largest expenditure of the general fund, the police department is budgeted at $25.7 million for the coming year. This budget reflects an increase of 7.6% over the prior year. The budget also includes the replacement of one motorcycle at a cost of $28,000. The police department is currently staffed with 100 sworn officers, 19 community service officers, and 16 administrative personnel. As the city contracts with Riverside County Sheriff's Office, we are subject to the rate increases negotiated by the county. The contractual rate increase for next year is projected at 7.5%, of which 2%, or nearly $500,000, is for the new communication system implemented by the county and will be included in the contract rate in perpetuity. Staff recommends maintaining the 3 current vacant positions into next fiscal year to help offset this increased cost. The vacant positions are one special enforcement team officer, 1 motorcycle officer, and an accident investigator. Maintaining these vacancies will generate $832,000 in annual savings. Finally, the cost-sharing arrangement for school resource officers will continue, with the city and school district sharing costs 50-50 to fund 5 SRO positions, saving the city approximately $337,000 per year. The fire department budget for next fiscal year is projected at $13.9 million, which is reduced by the $7.6 million fire tax credit collected via property tax payments. The net impact to the city's budget is $6.3 million, which is a 15% increase over the prior year, due to anticipated contract rate increases as CAL FIRE enters labor negotiations starting in July. An 11% rate increase was applied to the contract. The additional increase is due to a $300,000 contingency, which has been factored into the budget in the event the labor increases at a higher rate than anticipated. This budget represents 9.6% of the general fund, and the department currently has 65 employees and maintains the 4-person per engine staffing model. This year's allocation of funds towards local nonprofits through the Community Support Grant Program is budgeted to be $88,000. This program is being augmented by the net proceeds received from the Rod Run event occurring earlier this year. Council's discretionary funding of $25,000 is also included. And to help maintain the award-winning programs and services offered by the Community Services District, the general fund contributes annually to the district. Fiscal year 15-16's contribution is projected to be just over $5.6 million, of which $4.6 million will go towards recreation activities, $644,000 towards the library, and another $390,000 to cover the funding gap for residential streetlights. As the city's fleet continues to age, several vehicles have reached the end of their useful life. Public Works is requesting the replacement of 5 trucks and a new Vactron, and TCSD is requesting a new truck for the park rangers and park monitors. Additionally, as critical technology is nearing the end of its useful life, staff is recommending the investment in a new storage array network and server at a cost of $600,000. After analyzing the benefits of leasing versus buying, it's recommended that we lease this item to offer more flexibility over the long run as technology changes. Funds are also being requested to upgrade the Old Town and Civic Center Wi-Fi networks and replace the library's firewall, and continue to fund the annual life cycle replacement program for staff's computers and monitors. The purchase of these vehicles and equipment are paid from set-aside funds specifically for replacement of these assets. Benefiting departments will contribute annually to replenish these funds over the new asset's useful life. The proposed operating budget reflects staffing levels consistent with the prior year, with 158 total authorized positions, including the 5 council members. Staff is requesting 3 adjustments of authorized personnel. Within the finance office, staff is requesting to convert the vacant senior debt analyst position to a management analyst, resulting in a net savings to the general fund. Public Works is requesting to upgrade the soon-to-be vacant custodian position to a maintenance worker to provide broader flexibility and coverage. And we are also recommending the increase from 20 to 24 hours per week for 2 part-time office specialists. Project staffing changes from the prior year are offset by incoming revenue or expenditure savings. All costs associated with the current MOU and recent reopener negotiated last winter are reflected in the financial projections. And the intern fellowship program, which affords intern opportunities for local high school and college students, is funded with a $19,000 contribution from the general fund. And this program also reflects the Just Add One partnership with local private businesses, which is being augmented with CDBG funding in year 15-16. And that concludes the general fund portion of the presentation, so we can take questions if you have any at this time.
Questions on general fund operating budget?
I have a question. We said we have 5 SROs now, and we're sharing those at 50% with the school district. And those are in addition to the 135 officers that, or staff that we have.
They're included
police.
in that.
Oh, they're included?
They're part
Okay.
of the 100 sworn count.
Okay,
Correct, Chief?
okay.
Normally, when we calculate our ratios of sworn officers to population, do we count SROs?
Mhm. Any sworn officer goes into that ratio count.
Yeah, that's always been the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, the CSOs are not sworn, so they're not counted as part of that
Got it.
ratio.
Now,
Okay.
I have one more question.
okay.
We noted $187,000 for, I think you said staffing at the incubator. Is it one person on site? And it includes benefits and,
Right, it's actually 70% of an individual's time who oversees and manages that operation, but that 187 covers also the operating cost of utilities and
okay,
the total costs of that.
okay.
And just to clarify on that, the reason that is higher than previous years is we've reduced the staff costs from the economic development operating budget, and we moved it to the incubator where it's been assigned.
Okay,
So the ED budget went down by a like amount. We just assigned those 70% of those salary costs to the
okay.
incubator.
Yeah, I thought that seemed high, that's why.
Okay, how are we on speakers?
We have one speaker, Katie Parker.
Great. Okay, let's listen to the speaker then. Ms. Parker. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor, City Council, and Budget Committee. My name is Katie Parker. I serve as the Executive Director for Susan G. Komen Inland Empire. And I'm here today to discuss the Race for the Cure sponsorship. But first, before I make my remarks, I would just like a clarification, as the application we did submit was for special events, and I was told by Aaron that the recommendation, part of it was reading that what was recommended for change and express concern was the grant of 22.5 be entirely benefiting to local Temecula residents, patients associated with breast cancer. So I just am clarifying, is the 22.5 in the special event request considered a grant, or is this a different entity's application?
No, the 22,500 that the Economic Development Subcommittee was considering at that meeting is general fund dollars that is built into the city's operating budget.
Okay.
And it's viewed as a grant, as our others that we deliberated on that day.
Okay, so the event application is actually a grant application too?
That's how we view it, because
Okay.
it's general fund dollars
Okay.
to a nonprofit.
Great. I just want to make sure I was clear on that before I made my remarks.
If I could maybe further clarify, because I'm not sure from your question, are you asking if there's a differentiation between the project support costs and the 22.5?
Yes, I was just trying to clarify that, because usually when we submit the request, it's one application, but I have noticed that there are community grants as well. So I want to be clear that I was talking about the right thing.
Okay, I mean, just so I'm clear, it's one application. It's got two parts. One is the city paying for the support costs, and the other is the grant. It's not treated any separately in
Okay.
terms of the city, so I want to be
thank
clear.
you.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I was clear. I'm here today to request a reconsideration of the Budget Committee's presentation for our Race for the Cure for just support costs. For 16 years, we have received city support for the Race for the Cure, and we are so thankful, and it has really helped us throughout these years. What I'm looking to answer today is really what is required, or the thought process behind the funding that was removed, the cash dollars for the Race for the Cure. For 16 years times $22.50, the city has then funded us nearly $360,000. They state that the funds, their funds would like to go back directly to the city of Temecula and residents to help with breast cancer outreach or education. From the list of our 16-year revenue, we have donated, invested back into the Temecula community through Temecula nonprofits, $1,394,771.40, basically leaving, after you subtract the previous grants that you have given us, $1,034,771.40 balance that we have invested in the community over the 22.5 for all these years. We're concerned that as our founders in 1996 took the region of the Inland Empire for the support for the Race for the Cure, and that is mandated by our policies, and one of our founding members, Marianne Edwards, is here today, and was just recently at our grants reception where she did witness all the grants throughout our whole region that have been provided through our Race for the Cure and other funds. 75% of the proceeds from the race remain in our service area, and 25% goes back to Komen headquarters for grants. Strictly 100% of those dollars are for research. No money goes to any outside costs, CEU salaries, or anything at Komen headquarters. So what we're looking at to talk about today is really that we'd love to have this reinstated, because these costs help us maintain the race and helps us offset the structure and the cost so that we can give back more to the community. It is also noted that even if a nonprofit in Temecula does not request grants from Komen from the Race for the Cure or other events, that Susan G. Komen Inland Empire in its own is a nonprofit that provides services in the Temecula area through our Prayer in Pink program and many education outreach programs that we provide in services. So we wanted clarification on too, as the document had also read it, that it should be recommended to be directly presented to a nonprofits where the proceeds are benefiting Komen locally. So Komen Inland Empire also provides those services even if another agency does not apply for grants. So today, we would like you to reinstate the 22.5 so that we can continue to help the community. And to be noted, not only have we not overfunded, because you can never overfund benefits to people who are fighting breast cancer, but $1 million over what the city has given us in funds. And that doesn't even begin to count all the funds and the way the community benefits business-wise from our Race for the Cure, through the restaurants, through hotels, lodging, just many benefits, not only to the community for breast cancer, but the community at large. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. If I could ask you, and we will have that discussion here. You talked about 75% of the funds raised through the race going directly to your service area. Would you define service area?
The net proceeds, and our service area is all of San Bernardino and Riverside counties.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions?
Thank you. No other speakers? Okay. We have some other parts of the budget.
We do. We have a community services budget, and then we have a 5-year discussion, and those are the last two remaining items.
Why don't we go through and do all that, and then let's handle the discussion
Okay.
all at once. No further speakers, correct? Okay, so let's do that. Go ahead.
All right, then we will proceed with the Community Services District fiscal year 15-16 operating budget. Projected revenue is estimated at $19.9 million. And the major funding sources include $9.7 million from TCSD rates and charges, $1.86 million, which represented the TCSD's portion of the city's special tax, and the other half of the special tax goes to park maintenance, which is included in the general fund. $5.6 million for the Temecula Community Services District. This is the contribution from the general fund that Jennifer mentioned previously. And $2.7 million is made up of a combination of recreation fees and contract class user fees and other revenue sources. Again, the total projected revenue is estimated at $19.9 million. On the expenditure side, proposed expenditures are listed at $20.1 million, and the main categories include $8.9 million for park and recreation, $7.2 million for recycling and refuse hauling, $1.8 million for slope maintenance, $1 million for residential street lighting, $860,000 for the Temecula Public Library, $245,000 for operation and maintenance costs associated with the Harveston Lake Park, and just under $10,000 for dirt road maintenance services assigned to Leifer Road. And the shortfall between revenues and expenditures within the TCSD is not uncommon, and this difference is being made up with fund balances from various service levels for one-time expenditures. Regarding the city's special tax, when Measure C was passed in 1997, the voters established the special tax rate at $74.44 per home per year, which we are proposing once again to charge this fiscal year. Excuse me. Our residents, however, receive an excellent level of service because of the city's general fund contribution towards park and recreation services. In fact, if our park and recreation program was totally funded through the special tax, it would cost our residents $171 per home per year. And while I believe it was always envisioned the general fund would subsidize the special tax contribution for park and rec services, in fact, in a reasonable amount, yet this is an area that we must remain sensitive to today and in outer years. This subsidy with new facilities coming online will be important to evaluate in our 5-year forecast. As you can see, our residents realize a savings of $96.34 per home per year, as this is paid by the general fund, not the special tax. As I outlined before, the general fund will contribute $5.6 million as part of the Temecula Community Service District funding in fiscal year 15-16. Some of the park and recreation highlights include the opening of Eagle Soar Playground and Splash Pad Inclusive Play Area. It was dedicated to the special needs families within our community. The development of a public-private partnership with Temecula Youth Basketball League to renovate the CRC gym floor and replacement scoreboards. The successful execution of the city's 25-year anniversary celebration. Cultural arts special events that include First Friday art events in Old Town, movies in the park, summer concert series, street painting, and much more. The completion of an award-winning video exhibit showcasing the oral history of World War II veterans. And TCSD event staff has successfully coordinated and promoted for the second year in a row the 2015 Rod Run in Old Town. Signature special events such as the 4th of July Parade, fireworks show, Santa's Electric Light Parade, Temecula on Ice, the seasonal ice rink, and many, many more. As well as collaboration with the OTTA and VTV, or Visit Temecula, on branded seasonal attractions like Winterfest. The development of alternate performing arts venues during the theater's renovation, and of course programming and recreation, sports, and active adult seniors and individuals with special needs will continue. It is also important to note that Councilmember Ron had requested staff explore conducting a senior services needs assessment, which has already begun and will involve evaluating resources for seniors, including transportation, programs, volunteers, sharing of information, and obtaining feedback through community workshops at Mary Phillips Senior Center. We expect to have a draft for Councilman Ron and the City Council to review in the next 30 days. With respect to SARTA, finally, the debt service payments for the former RDA bonds listed at $7.2 million, as well as the Department of Finance approved enforceable obligations at $1.2 million.
I'm sorry, Aaron, just for the public's sake, SARTA is the successor agency to the redevelopment agency.
Yes.
Kind of a mouthful, but.
A lot of acronyms I'm throwing out there. These obligations include the Abbott OPA, which is the owner participation agreement, the Abbott DDA, which is the Abbott Development Disposition Agreement, and affordable housing obligations. The formal adoption of the fiscal year 15-16 operating budgets, again, will be presented to the council in full on June 9. And this concludes the presentation on the annual operating budgets in SARTA. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, or otherwise we can proceed to the 5-year.
Why don't we go ahead with the 5-year?
Okay.
Per city policy, staff creates a 60-month forecast for the general fund and TCSD each year. This long-range forecast serves as a strategic planning tool to help evaluate the city's ability to meet its long-term obligations. The benefit of long-range planning is to alert decision makers of trends in time to implement changes if necessary. Staff has met periodically over the past year with the newly established Strategic Fiscal Planning Ad Hoc Committee to share information and trends that may impact the city's financial outlook. This chart illustrates the projected growth of the general fund's revenue and expenditures over the coming 5-year period. With the anticipated increases in public safety, expenditures are projected to outpace revenues. Beginning next fiscal year, operating expenditures are projected to exceed available revenues, creating a draw on available fund balance. Staff uses all known information and trends available to us at the time to develop the growth assumptions for both revenue and expenditures. While tax revenues have shown solid growth in fiscal year 14-15, shifts in development revenue and gas tax adjustments anticipated next year are offsetting this growth, causing a lower revenue base for future years. Expenditures primarily related to public safety are increasing at an unsustainable pace. Police and fire contracts are increasing due to labor agreements, the new communication systems, as well as projected increases in pension rates. This chart provides an 11-year trend for both police and fire expenditures, including 5 years of actuals and 6 years of anticipated costs. As you can see, between 2009 and 2014, actual police costs rose 13%, or $2.6 million, while the fire budget, net of the tax credit, increased 17%, or $741,000. Over the 11-year period, it's anticipated that police costs will rise by 68% and fire by 54% by the year 2018-19, and this is with no changes in staffing levels. While these costs are merely projections at this point, the chart reflects the potential compounding effect of the anticipated rate increases in public safety. The actual rate for 15-16 will become available to us in March of 2016 and will be retroactive back to July. The continued trend of cost increases outpacing revenue growth will ultimately deplete general fund balance. This chart illustrates how quickly this may occur if measures are not implemented within the next few years. By fiscal year 1920, the city will have a $5.9 million shortfall in meeting the council's current policy of a 25% reserve requirement. This chart shows the benefit of long-range fiscal planning by acknowledging a looming structural deficit while providing enough advance notice to implement course-corrective changes. In order to balance the 5-year forecast, we can only reduce expenditures, increase revenues, or do a combination of both. To help contain cost escalation, we are maintaining vacant positions where feasible. We are in the process of evaluating a new fire staffing models to reduce costs, as well as update the city's fee study to ensure adequate cost recovery. In 2007, the council authorized a 1% fee on cable franchises. However, the fee was never imposed, and beginning later this year, the city will begin collecting these fees, which will generate approximately $300,000 per year. Additionally, staff is evaluating the steps necessary to revisit the TCSD special tax, which has been held constant for over a decade. Other revenue options may include a local sales tax, or a new utility users tax, both of which would require voter approval.
And as the council addresses the 5-year projections, it is important to keep an eye on additional impacts to the city's budget. The nearly completed employee classification and compensation studies are nearly complete. It remains one of my top organizational goals to graduate into these recommendations as fiscal resources are proven available. As the City Council is aware, these studies and desire have been discussed for many years, and the long-term fiscal impact associated with this action will and is being evaluated. And as Old Town continues to thrive and in a post-RDA era, we must begin developing strategies to address the demand for parking and assure Old Town remains economically competitive and desirable. Parking solutions in the future may involve private properties, public properties, or a combination of both, with innovation and policy. We envision the near-complete Kaiser Marston Old Town Market Study to launch these discussions further in greater detail. And CalPERS unfunded liabilities are a growing concern for state and local governments combined. The city has commissioned an actuarial expert to develop long-term strategies to address our unfunded liabilities. For the second year in a row, we have also taken advantage of CalPERS prepayment option for our annual pension costs, which created $170,000 in savings and helps reduce the long-term liabilities. Again, we are proposing to do this again this year. Water. The recent policy changes of water purveyors in response to drought conditions could have an economic impact on our community and others throughout the state. Yet it remains to be seen what this impact on development or further restrictions will mean, yet we must keep this in front of us as well. And finally, as you've heard throughout this presentation, the rising costs of public safety are of top concern. It is important for me to acknowledge, however, the exceptional service we are afforded by both our police and fire personnel, and undoubtedly they contribute to the high quality of life in our community. That said, the contract cities of Riverside County have been discussing these concerns of sustainability for the better part of the year. It is our expectation that these discussions continue at both my level and amongst the elected officials to ensure we can responsibly continue to afford the service levels that we need. It may also be beneficial to have the community weigh in on their priorities associated with such future impacts. In closing, I did not want the forecasted concerns to overshadow the city's fiscal solvency today and the very responsible draft budget and CIP for the coming year. We have a great deal to be proud of and remain a blessed community on many fronts. I'd like to thank all the department heads and their staff for their efforts in preparing an excellent budget submittals. I also want to recognize the members of the budget team who have dedicated many, many hours over the past several months to complete this operating budget and CIP. My thanks to Jennifer, Rudy Graciano, Pascal Brown, Erica Russo, Shirley Robinson, Monica Jorgensen, and Evelyn Watson. Thank you. And with that, your staff is available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Adams and team. We know from all of our years of experience collectively here that it's a monumental effort to get to the point that we're at this morning and to put together a budget that is balanced and sensible. And we know that this year's been a little bit more challenging than most, and it's a little scary to look out the 5-year. But with that, we have several things now that we've been presented with, the operating budgets from the various agencies, most notably the city operating budget. So let's just, this is a workshop, so let's just combine questions, comments, and at this point, everything's on the table. With Council Marianne?
Just to clarify, Temecula has a balanced budget and our targeted reserve is whole and healthy, so that's good news. But referencing the shortfall, the 5-year shortfall, 25%, by 25%, but that was a shortfall in the reserves, correct? That's gonna, as we're
Meeting the
depleting our
reserves.
reserves, and the council has set a goal for the level that we want to maintain those reserves. So the shortfall in 5 years, just want to clarify that that was in the reserves.
Right, it would mean we would be short 5.9 million in meeting our 25% reserves.
Okay, for reserves. What would be, have we figured out what the potential savings would be if we went to 3.0 staffing?
Yeah,
fire?
we've crunched some of those numbers, and it's our estimate that it's about a $1.5 million a year savings to go from 4.0 to 3.0.
Okay, and what impact does that actually have? Because Mayor Comachero and I exchanged a few comments during
Yeah,
the discussion.
we've done, and I know Councilman Ron and I have talked a little briefly about this. We've done some preliminary research on the ISO aspect of this, and I don't pretend to have all of this resolved today, but some of the preliminary research we've gotten from our insurance providers is that there would not be an impact to insurance premiums to go from 4.0 to 3.0. Now, I can't confirm that, but this is some of the preliminary information that we've got, and we intend to sort of drill down a little further on that.
And what would be the impacts of the services, to service?
Well, I wish Chief Brown was here, but I think from the fire perspective, they would say there is some degree of operational handicapping that is involved in a structure fire, if indeed there's a structure fire and the policy of 2 in and 2 out. So in that sense, there would be a little bit of a disadvantage. And I don't know, Councilman Ron, if you want to speak to that too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd start by saying that if there's one thing I'd fall on my sword on for our city is the 4.0 staffing. I don't think we should reduce that at all. And I would adamantly oppose any movement toward 3.0. And there's several reasons why. One is, and I'm not sure where they're coming up with their ISO ratings, but it would be an impact to our ISO rating. I'm not sure why they're saying it wouldn't, because that's a significant difference in the quality and level of service that's provided in our community, and also directly impacts response times. Like you mentioned, for structure fires, for instance, the policy for an engine responding on scene is 2 in, 2 out, meaning 2 firefighters can enter the structure as long as there are 2 firefighters on the outside of the structure. When you move that level to a 3.0 staffing, it means that they are unable to enter the structure effectively, waiting for a second engine to show up on scene. And if the second engine has a secondary response time of 4 minutes or longer, that could actually extend total response times, doubling potential entry into a structure. Makes it unsafe for the residents, makes it unsafe for the firefighters as well. The other is, and one of the things that doesn't get, I think, effectively discussed are responses to vehicle incidents, medical aid, wildfires in particular, along with just sort of your routine traffic issues as well. And so knowing, I'm sure you know my background is, I've spent about 8 years doing research on effectiveness for public safety and a particular emphasis on firefighters. And I can tell you from experience that moving to a 3.0 model is a significant detriment to our community. So I'd be happy to, answer any questions at the council in absence of our fire chief. Be happy to answer any questions about that, but I'd say I've got a considerable handle on the situation. And like I say, it would be one of those things that I'd absolutely oppose in the city of Temecula.
Matt, you asked if there are any questions. It's terrific having you on the council. I mean, your expertise is just invaluable. But I've got to ask, while nobody wants to go from 4.0 to 3.0, the question on everybody's mind, not this year, I think we're committed this year in the budget to move forward, but looking out over the 5 year, how do we pay for it? And something, more than one something, a lot of things are going to have to give if we don't have some change in the structure the way it's presented. So how do we pay for it?
Well, I think that's something that I was hoping we would get to today, because if we can draw in the other side of public safety, this is indeed half of our budget, and I've spent some time talking with folks about the issues. Our population numbers are now, let's just say, close to 109,000 people. And again, we're dealing with, these ratios, and the rule of thumb sort of ratio is 1 sworn officer per 1,000 residents. And I understand that that's not a perfect assessment, and certainly not a perfect discussion of what the sworn officers provide as far as service levels, response times, and patrol times and so forth. But it is, a good sort of back of the envelope calculation. And so from my perspective too, we're 9 sworn officers below where we need to. And while we're experiencing these, I think, significant impacts to our budget from, rising public safety costs, I think we need to be extremely aware of the impact that external factors have had in our community. When we look at things like the realignment and the release of, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, roughly 4,000 folks from our local jails, is that about right?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the numbers locally, but it's certainly.
Well, yeah, and so, I mean, and we can, get better data on all of this, but from what I understand and what I've seen in the data that you've provided and I've looked into myself is that, our population is increasing. We need to be able to keep pace with the population increase in our service levels for both fire and police protection. But the external factors, so when we have, a release of prisoners onto the streets, there's a visible increase in our impacts to public safety, things like burglary, theft, a vehicle, and so forth. And then with Prop 47 passing, bumping a lot of our felonies down to misdemeanors, we had a similar increase in crime. And I think, we need to be very aware that the city, and all due respect to fire and police, they do an admirable job and wonderful job in our city. But a lot of what we're experiencing now are external factors that the city has no control over. Right. And so we can either, ignore the fact that, the external environment has changed on us, or we need to create an aggressive, I think very aggressive program right now to address this change into the future. Because 5 years from now, my big concern is that folks are going to look back at our city council today and say, much like how I vision our drought situation, is that this was the slowest moving Titanic ever. We saw this coming, and we had an opportunity today to start steering that wheel toward a successful, I think, budget situation. And if 5 years from now we haven't done our due diligence on that, then I think we've failed our city significantly. And so from my perspective and my experience in this area, what I would like to see is that we maintain fire staffing. I understand it comes at a cost. And ideally, I would like to see that we increase police protection, because our communities, will suffer from that into the future as our population increases, and as these external factors play a more significant role in our community. And so I think we need to have a serious conversation about what we do today to help offset that. I know we're going to be fine for the next couple of years, but let's have a very serious conversation about that, because from my perspective, we're $5 million short in what 18, 19. And I see that from a public safety perspective, I would like to see an additional $2.5 million moved into that budget to help offset the losses in staffing and things that we have right now. So rather than, and I'd really like to steer this conversation away from a discussion of, what are the benefits to the city for reducing staffing. A $1 million reduction to bring us to 3.0 staffing comes at a serious cost to our community. So I would rather us steer the discussion toward not how do we cut money from the budget for future savings, but how do we improve our budget situation in the future to meet the demand, just to meet the current demand we have right now, because we're not, and then moving it into the future to make sure that we exceed the public safety expectations for our community.
To be clear, Matt, I don't think anybody's talking about cutting the budget. In fact, based on the numbers we're seeing, we realize that there'll be a need to increase the public safety budget. The concern is, where is that money going? And as we saw in the 5-year, from 26 million in public safety to 40 million, and that doesn't get us any increase. That just gives us status quo. So I think we've got to get at the root cause, and we are doing that now when working in conjunction with other cities. Clearly, it's not just a Temecula problem, it's a regional problem, and we're working on that with everybody. Just the increases that we're going to see over the years just are absolutely not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
And that's at the core of this entire discussion. So a lot of issues there. Certainly agree with you. At one point we got down to, I think, even just below one officer per 900, if I recall. and it's been creeping up ever since, now one for 1,090 in the currently proposed budget. As far as I think we're all concerned, that's not acceptable, and with the external forces. So we're getting squeezed on both ends, clearly, with state regulation forcing, I know it's a strong word, forcing crime up, while at the same time costs are increasing just to maintain the level that we need. So something's got to give. It's not going to work the way it is. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's a stimulating discussion, and it is timely that we have it. I couldn't agree with Mr. Ron Moore. You know, I don't talk about it much. I did spend a period of time in my life as a firefighter in Big Bear Lake, and I can assure you that if you respond with 3 people on the fire truck, all it requires is another fire truck to show up, so you're gonna have 4 or 5 firefighters on scene anyway. And you're gonna end up paying for it anyway. One thing we'll give, and that's just the reality. And so we went to 4.0 staffing. We did several good things. We actually ended up saving money in the long run because we weren't responding with more apparatus. But there's a bigger picture I want to talk about. You know, first of all, I thought God bless Sheriff Stan Sniff and Chief Kubel, you guys do a fantastic job. There are things that go on in this city that for, public safety reasons, we don't make public. But some of the things that go on behind the scenes to keep the city safe are nothing short of just marvelous. And you've done a great job. And really, our officers are great. And I float that up, as we all have, because I don't want this discussion to ever revolve around our police services. So I want to get that out of the way. We all value our police department. I thought it was, and I love Sheriff Stan Sniff. He's a very, in my opinion, a good sheriff. I did think it was a bit presumptuous that he assumed that we're going to pay for a new communication facility and just, go ahead and charge us. And it worries me that I don't know what's next on his plate that he just assumes our contract's going to pay for. So first thing is to stop that bleeding, okay, to cauterize any sort of decision like that in the future. And if it's in our contract that those things are in play, let's get them out of play, okay, or let them know. That's sort of just some cleanup. A couple of things I do want to talk about. The police service is not sustainable. And ever since our existence as a city, we have said we will not be mediocre. We have said that. We've declared it. We've worked for it. Every staff member, every council member, every citizen, all the nonprofits have said we're not going to be mediocre. And as such, we've become the premier city in Riverside County. Certainly one of the top ones. And now outside elements, budget constraints are grabbing us and pulling us down to mediocrity. And now we're faced with decisions that some of us can say we shouldn't be forced to have to decide. Prop 47 is one. Public safety increase is going up. These things we're faced with, and so we've wondered, what do we do? And not to oversimplify, it's very simple. You either make more money or you cut. That really is where it amounts to, or you move some things around. Where we arrive now with public safety, we arrived there because we said we're not going to be mediocre. To start cutting things starts to put us on a path of mediocrity, and if that's where we're going, then I don't think that's where we're going, and I don't want to go there. So what do? We have a lot of outside influences on this city. Mr. Ron alluded to some, but he didn't allude to them all. We have become a tourism city, okay? And when you look at it, we have created, with the help of many, many people, okay, nonprofits, business community, a $650 million tourism industry. People associate Temecula with wine country. You cannot get to the wine country unless you come through Temecula. Pachanga is a destination resort. Our mall is regional in nature. And just so you know, no new mall such as the Promenade Mall has been built in the United States over the past 10 years. They're not being built. That model is pretty much done, and chances are very high in the I-215 corridor there'll not be another one done. So we'll continue to be a regional mall. And of course, we have our Old Town. All of this has been a financial boon for the city, but it has also cost us. You know, when I look at, some of the crime statistics in Murrieta, and, you know, it's funny, for violent crime, we've been right up there, I mean, which is a testimony to our police department. We were number 3 one year, number 5 the other, number 30 the other, and, you know, Murrieta has kind of been ahead of us in that regard, if you use that as a measuring stick. But it's interesting. They have none of these outside influences on them. When you talk about, you know, the patrols for drunk drivers, on both Pachanga Parkway and people speeding there on the way to Pachanga Casino, which again draws, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people a year. The wine country draws hundreds of thousands of people a year. So I'm going somewhere with this, and so I don't want to posture too much, but I need to lay this out.
Yeah, me too.
Our budget is static, okay? We've done a great job, everybody in this community, but there's no more resources to draw upon. And frankly, I don't want to cut, and I'm not into raising taxes, okay? I'm vehemently against that. But as Mr. Ron's Titanic example, I'm sitting here, in all honesty, not certain what to do, okay? I know what the community wants, and that's police services second to none, fire services second to none. Mr. Mayor, you said something very poignant. How are you going to pay for it? We all want those things. I would like to see us map out a plan, and a very detailed plan, to now start taking this question out to the community. We need to ask the citizens what they want to do. Now, I don't want to abdicate my position as a leader. I'll make the tough decisions as I need to make them. But I need to know, is our community willing to add or vote in a 50 cent sales tax or 1 penny sales tax? I don't want to do that, but when I look at a community that's a tourism community, I see, I mean, literally, if you had a 1 cent sales tax, it would double our budget and think about it, it would double our sales tax budget and our problems would be over.
$30 million.
Yeah, that's right, and we'd be out of mediocrity instantly. I mean, if our citizens knew that, would they vote that in? And then, shoot, we can double our police services at that point almost, certainly increase them. Do they want to do that? What do they want us to do? Because with Prop 47, with the increases in salary, with everything that's going on, the arrows in our quiver are very minimal. And if the community wants a sales tax measure, or if we decide to do a CFD, a Community Facilities District for public safety, all of these things have to be on the table. And I don't know where I stand on such a measure. I got to tell you, I have some personal feelings. Would I pay an extra penny in my sales tax? Sure. What would it end up costing me? Most of it would come out of this tourism dollars, the $650 million that is in this region that is being paid by people who don't live here. Same thing with the TOT tax. That's being paid by people who don't live here. But everybody doesn't like the word tax, and neither do I. So I'm going to float for discussion that we create an agenda and a dialogue with our citizens, mapping out all of these constraints so that we can get their feedback, and let them know what we're up against here as their leaders. And we'll make the decisions when they come, but I need to hear what the community is saying. That's number one. Number two is,
I'm sorry,
Yes.
if I could just interrupt, but
please.
I agree with you, and the value of our discussion here today, looking out over a 5-year projection, is exactly that.
Exactly.
To give us 5 years, or 3 years, or 4 years, wherever the flashpoints hit, to solve these issues, because they're very difficult.
They are.
But I'm sure they're solvable, and so that's why we look at it. So,
Mr.
but
Mayor,
continue, please.
And I want to tell you, we can easily hop. Okay, we can
Yeah,
do
we're not
what a
gonna
lot
do
of
that.
governments do. We got a balanced budget. We'll have a balanced budget next year, and we can probably balance it next year and pull a little. You know what I mean? And then you'll be gone, and I'll be gone, and we can send this down to the generations and model Washington D.C. Okay.
Oh, no.
All right, but we're not going to do that. Okay, and I think at that point we need to go out to the community and say, we're making bricks without straw. What do you want us to do? Okay, so I've said enough on that. So I want to have that dialogue and see what my colleagues think. The other thing I want to talk about is might be a little bit sensitive because we dealt with it before. When we passed Measure C, we didn't put an escalator in it, and so It's stagnant at when we passed it according to the
97.
economy in 1997, and there's been increases in things since then. And it's interesting, and when we passed it and were able to tax people at $74 and some change, we didn't do it. And we didn't do it for a number of years. And Mr. Stone came up with the REST program, and we absolutely supported it because it was a pseudo de facto tax cut. Our general fund supplemented that 74, so we didn't charge the total 74 for a number of years. If you add it up, we gave millions of dollars back in pseudo tax cuts. Now we're at a point where our general fund supports TCSD to the tune of, what was it, about $4 million?
5.6.
What is it?
5.6.
$5.6 million. And believe it or not, that issue is the same issue as we're dealing with public safety. Our citizens want that level of service. It defines our quality of life here. It is Temecula. Those things go hand in hand with being a safe community. And I know I'm taking up a lot of time, Mr. Mayor.
It's okay, you're doing fine.
But this is important. You know, when you go to our mall, Chief Kubel, I go there and I see our seniors out, I see our families out with their kids, and I see our kids hanging outside the theater, you know, doing what teenagers do, and it's safe. They're not worried about gangs and drugs, and we've created a very safe community, and it goes along with everything we've created. In a few years, that's going to be in jeopardy, and so we're getting ahead of it now. So where am I going? We need to find some way to bridge the gap between TCSD and the general fund of $5 million. I'm not saying that we go out for another tax measure, but we did float the idea of sponsorships a few years ago. And we've had, I don't want to call it contentious because we're never really contentious, but we had, it was one of the points where council really.
Vibrant discussion.
It was vibrant discussion. And I remember at the time, Councilmember Washington had to leave, and we ended up settling on a 50%, what have you, and I think we need to revisit it. We need to revisit it, especially since our staff is now taking over more of the events that are going to occur in Old Town. I think there's some large corporations that would want to brand and get involved in what we're doing here in Temecula, but it's very difficult the way we're allocating where money goes. Now, I understand we were concerned that big sponsorships would cause people from contributing to some of the nonprofits. And I think that's a discussion we need to continue to have. But we have to find a way to bridge that gap. Because there's only two ways to do it: to cut the services or to get more general fund money to continue to support it. And then when we start talking general fund money, now we're talking about public safety. And so all of this is related. We really have to begin to pull out all the stops and look at everything. And we need to do it now, not next year. We need to engage in this now. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mike. I don't think you're gonna get much
She was
argument.
first.
Well, we've heard from, we'll go back to Mary Ann in a minute. Mike.
Okay.
I agree with Mr. Nagar. Getting the community involved is one great way of doing this. We provide where we are currently and where we're trying to go. 25, 28, 29 years ago, before we incorporated, someone had a great idea about doing something of this nature. So the same thing could apply here. Our citizens, they're very smart, they're very intelligent, they know where they are, they know where they want to be. You know, provide information to them as much as we can without talking about contracts. Provide it to them and let them know what the options are. I propose we do a survey, propose some of our specific questions, and have it open-ended. So a lot of creative ideas are out there that we haven't even thought of because we see this, work with it every day. Sometimes somebody on the outside can look at it and think of something we haven't thought of. So maybe do a survey and ask for open-ended questions. What do you recommend and how do you go about doing it? And by doing that, that may generate some more ideas, some more energy. So as Mr. Nagar says, I'm not for raising taxes. At the same time, there's a need for the service. So, you know, maybe our residents could come up with something we haven't considered, something as easy as, how about this? Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Aaron, I think these are all good points. Why don't we, when it comes forward to the council, however you want to do it, they either create a line item or through your city manager's authority. I assume the cost of a survey like that's probably in the $10,000–15,000 range. So let's.
Okay.
I know money's tight,
Yeah.
But I think those are great ideas, and let's see if we can't find a line item to take that forward. Yeah.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. And what I'm suggesting, and it's a very delicate thing, and Councilmember Ron alluded to it. I don't want to sound a clarion call that somehow, public safety's in jeopardy, the city's finances are in jeopardy. We got to be very careful, because none of that's the case. On the other hand, I think we need to present the truth to the community in various ways, and a survey is one of them. Maybe, and I want to have this discussion, because I'm not certain how to go about doing it. Maybe it's in workshops and forums, maybe it's community meetings, maybe we have to have 15, 20 community meetings throughout the whole city. I don't know how it is. It needs a full court press so that this whole community is aware of what's going on. And then, you know what? You just said something which really blessed my heart. Our citizens are the best. They'll know how to help us solve this problem. And I want to go tap into that. And not everybody's going to agree, but we'll come back with the answers we need. But I think we need this one. We need to go out to the community.
Those of us, and I think it includes most of us sitting here, have been around for a while. I'll never forget what our dear Pat Birdsall said when we went out for Measure C in March of 1997, when Jeff Stone and I went to everybody who would listen to try and push that measure, and Pat said, "I trust the citizens of Temecula." And I said, we need a 2/3 vote to pass this. And she said, "I trust the citizens of Temecula." And we got close to 80% for that. So I agree with that completely. And that's a good idea. Anyway, there's more to discuss. So. Marianne?
I wasn't on the council in 1997, but Tom and I also worked on Measure C.
remember.
And I remember coming up with the formula, and I said back in 1997, Measure C is going to cost you the same that you would pay for a pack of gum every day. And the residents of Temecula saw the value in our parks, and they saw the value of 20 cents per day. And we are still at 20 cents per day. So how much is a pack of gum now? Does anybody even know?
$3,500.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's a good number. Yeah.
So a pack of gum is what, $1? More than $1? $1.50? I don't even know. But our citizens have been able to enjoy even more parks, yet still pay that 20 cents per day. So I think we can take another look at that. There is another way. Of course, if we're looking at, and we're assuming that there's going to be an increase, the same unsustainable increase in police and fire, because when we do this, we look out a minimum of 5 years, which is what we're doing. So that's why the doomsday bell isn't ringing today, but that's why we are having this discussion, because in 5 years, we have to be prepared. So we have to assume the worst. We've got to assume the worst case scenario, and that is that the unsustainable increases in police and fire will continue. To that end, we have said there are, 17 contract cities in Riverside? In Riverside. So there are 16 other cities that are in the same boat that we are in. And I know that we are gathering together to discuss perhaps looking at forming a JPA and taking over the negotiations and contracting as a group.
Marianne, if I could interrupt, I don't think that's quite accurate. I mean, yes, we're going to be discussing options and common problems with all the contract cities, but I don't think anybody's saying at this point that we're considering alternatives. We'll have that discussion.
I think the point is that there's strength in numbers, and so with 16 other cities saying the same thing that Temecula is saying, it's just not realistic, and that's the bulk of the income or the staffing power for police and CAL FIRE. So we have not had a voice at the table, and that's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to work with the other cities to get a voice at the table. We also don't know what the county is being charged for police and fire. So we don't know that all the 17 cities are not paying the county's way for their police and fire. And that's what happens with a contract city. We have the most outstanding public safety I can imagine. Our police force is tremendous. CAL FIRE has been tremendous for us, but as we've said, we can't sustain the cost, so something's going to have to be done. So in addition to, we could cut staffing, which nobody wants to do. So I think we need to include the fact that we are talking with other cities about what we can do as a large group to impact those unsustainable costs. I think the 20 cents a day has been great for our residents for parks, and they obviously saw the value because it passed by 86%?
No, 78.
78%. It was a huge win for Measure C. So I think that our residents would, again, see the value in the same effort maybe for public safety. So I just wanted to emphasize that we're looking out 5 years because that's what we do, and that's why Temecula has been able to survive this horrible recession when so many cities have gone bankrupt and had a very difficult time. So that's why we're having this discussion. We don't like to have this discussion, but we have to have it.
Yeah, and Marion, I'm glad you brought that up because, Mike, I just wanted to expand a little bit on what you said. You said the only options we have are to cut expenses or increase revenue. I think Marion has brought up the third option, and that's to work on the external forces to control the growth in expenses, and that's a big part of the discussion as well. It's probably a combination of all. Yeah, Matt.
Well, yeah, and I just wanted to, I mean, these are all great ideas, and I think it's getting toward what we actually need to accomplish here, and I see this sort of as a multi-tiered approach, right? So one of those is our cities need a seat at the table, both at the state and at the county level, because these decisions are being made in absence of us participating. Now I understand, the negotiating process. I understand how all of that is working and the MOUs and things in place to ensure a fair process. However, I think it's incumbent on us to really push for city and local government representation in this process so that we're not handed something that is unsustainable. So that's number one. Number two is to push back on those issues that we are facing. If we're talking about Prop 47 or realignment or any of these external factors, I think now that we have a legislative platform within the city, thank you, Randy, for all your hard work on that, I think we have an opportunity to really have a strong presence both locally and statewide to push back on seeking solutions to respond to those risks that the city is facing and make our voice significantly heard, at a local and a statewide level and perhaps even nationally. I know the other thing I'd like to have us work on, there's no equivalent on the, unfortunately, on the law enforcement side that I'm aware of, but I do know that FEMA and DHS have grants through an FPS program they're called SAFER grants and so forth, that help subsidize staffing costs. It's not something that I think the city's ever explored. It's been very successful in other jurisdictions. Part of it, unfortunately, has to do with the income base and so forth of your community, and it's sort of a needs-based assessment. However, I think it would be worthwhile to start looking into other potential programs to help supplement our costs.
That might work for our SROs.
It may.
For a specialty like that.
Right. So I think, just finding, and that's not a long-term solution, don't get me wrong, because grants come and go, but at least to help supplement our existing budgets in the next few years, I think we'd, identify a fairly aggressive strategy on grant writing, potentially. And then, exploring this concept of CFDs or sales tax or whatever it is, I think we absolutely need to start walking down that path. And like everybody's expressed, I'm not a fan at all of increasing cost to our residents. However, we need to understand what the risks are for not doing that and really have a clear understanding of what it means. And Ms. Hennessy, I don't mean to criticize over the 3.0 staffing, because I think that's an important tool in this process, is understanding the cost savings, because I absolutely agree that we need to put that on the table and have that discussion, because we need to understand this is what it costs to do what we are doing, and make sure that we have everything on the table so we can fully understand the types of decisions and risks and costs that we're facing. I'd also like to, like Mr. Nagar said, with regard to community services, explore a new sponsorship model. I think it's time that we really delved into that a little bit deeper, because I think there are some really big potential solutions for helping offset community services budget. So I'd like to revisit that. And also, you know, I understand the Measure C, you know, perhaps revisiting that as well. And then one of the things too is you know, we have these subcommittees in place, and so I see that we have, you know, public safety and community services are two big issues in the budget, and so I'd like to make sure that we have, you know, a subcommittee formed specifically for those two issues, and perhaps it's two subcommittees or ad hoc subcommittees or something, to explore that. One that's dedicated toward, you know, addressing the public safety issue and discussing the things we've been talking about today with regard to public safety, and another to address that from the community services side. You know, and separate from the existing, I think, subcommittee structure that we currently have, because this is a bit of an, you know, offshoot of, and a very specific, I think, requirement that we have in front of us. And then lastly, I'd like to say, you know, I have said this before, is this philosophy of pay now or pay a lot more later. You know, you know, the investment we make today can considerably offset our costs. And it's not just for the city, right? And it's not just in you know, potential legal expenses and you know, losses in infrastructure and so forth from, you know, large incidents like fires and so forth, but it's also to our residents and in the form of lives, property, quality of life, and even our tourism. And so I see an investment, a strong investment in community services and public safety being an investment in the quality of life. And indeed, I think that investment, properly placed now, is a strong investment in our local economy and helps spur the kind of growth and hopefully benefits to taxes that we're looking for. A safe community attracts tourism. So if we can, you know, ensure that type of thing, then we can ensure those types of dollars and TOT coming into our city. So that's it.
Thanks, Matt.
You know, I think it needs to be said that I have, as long as I've lived here, I've been very proud of the fact that Temecula really doesn't charge taxes to our residents. I mean, we have some fees, and Measure C, of course, we call it a tax, but it was approved by the residents and it has not changed. And we have supplemented the increase in costs by taking it out of the general fund. So I think the key is, as Mike brought up, that we take it to the residents, and again, we have to tell them what bang are you getting for your buck. And like they did Measure C, I think that the residents would say, we want to maintain Temecula or even improve Temecula over the years. And looking out 5 years, I think that's something we're going to have to do. 20 cents per household per day, when you think of all the events and all the great parks, we're up to 39 now. It's certainly worth 20 cents a day. And I also think that Temecula residents value their quality of life. I know I do. That's why we've been here almost 30 years. And I think that they would see the value in maintaining that level of police and fire. And I think actually they would probably take pride in knowing that they're a part of maintaining Temecula's quality of life.
Thank you. You know, I think in listening to all this discussion, there's one thing that, well, there's a lot of things we have to be careful about. One, I think, and Matt, you just said it, as difficult as it may be to discuss coming off of 4.0 staffing, everything has to be on the table. This is just one of those circumstances where, and again, it's not today, but it's today for tomorrow. We don't want to bury our head in the sand today either. But one thing that concerns me as we talk about the potential for tax increases, whether it's sales tax or whether it's in the Measure A number, call it what you want, the tax increase, it's onerous to all of us. As I just said, everything needs to be on the table, including that. But as we go and talk to our residents, through whatever forum we use, we have to make sure that we're very clear and open with them. Obviously, we want to be, there's no question. One of the thoughts that comes to my mind back to the Measure C days, as we coined the phrase at that time, tell the truth and trust the people. Well, that's clear every day. That's important, but I think maybe we dust it off a little bit now, too, in this effort. But when we ask them, you know, what are their ideas and what do they want to do, we have to be clear that they understand if we wind up asking them for more money, if we ask them to put their hand in their pocket, what are we asking them to fund?
Yes.
Is it an increase in public service?
Yeah.
Or is it to fund increases in costs because we don't have the option to have input in that? And
Yes.
that's what's scary to me.
It is.
And so, you know, we've got to get, I said it before, we've got to get at that root cause. And Jennifer, as we go forward, I don't know that we want to repeat this whole discussion. We can, if everyone wants to, at the council, because this is more of a philosophical discussion. But I think we'd all like to see in that model that you showed, and hold on to that slide, that showed the 5-year increase from 26 to 40 million and what the impact is. That's a tremendously impactful slide. What would it look like if that increase on an annual basis were more according to regular cost of living, something we would do with the city budget in terms of employees and the like? Let's say we looked at a 3% escalation year over year. What would that look like? And how would that impact our general fund budget 3, 4, 5 years out? So maybe you've done that already. My suspicion is you have. And if you want to share that with us now, if you have,
Yeah,
go right
no,
ahead.
I just a couple points, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Just to put out there. We talked about this internally last night, but we've been doing citizen opinion surveys for a decade now, and we've been fortunate to get high marks on a number of things, and I think those surveys are pretty telling in that the two most cherished things that our community values over the last decade that we've been doing these surveys is their safety and their community services. They happen to be the same two things that are pushing the limits for us fiscally. So I just wanted to make that distinction because it's going to be important if we're charged to go out into the community. I think those are going to remain the two things that separate Temecula from a lot of communities and make us unique. So just that. And then clarification on that 5-year slide that Jen showed. I'm glad we're having this discussion today, and I'm glad we had it last year. I think I started bringing this up last year. Our 5-year profile and modeling, I'd say those numbers are good for about 24 of the 60 months, because once you get beyond 2 years, it gets a little fuzzy, and we have projections put in there based on the best information we have. These, all things remaining equal, as far as projected revenue, projected expenditures, we begin to feel this next year, not 5 years from now. And that's why we need to be having this serious discussion now. And I'm looking at the 5-year with hard numbers right now, and just to put it out there, we balanced the 15-16 budget. We told you that, about 480,000 revenues or expenditures. Projected in 16-17, which is not that far out there, all things remaining equal with what we know, we're upside down $250,000. The next year, you're upside down 900,000. And it compounds, again, not adding headcount to the city, not adding headcount to public safety, but based on the forecast that we have, this challenge is real, and that's why we're ringing the bell a little louder today than we did last year, and it is real. The other thing I wanted to mention is if we're charged to sort of go out to the community and do a survey or do workshops or whatever it may be, I would caution against having, the city needs to play a role in this, but I'm not sure it's in our best interest to be leading this charge if indeed there's initiatives associated with this. And so we may need a third-party objective consultant to sort of work on the city's behalf in this outreach, so the data and the collection and it's not us being viewed as a bias, measure and stuff. So I just kind of put that out there as well.
Aaron, I would recommend that you take 30 days or so. It doesn't have to come back with the budget.
Okay.
Put together a plan. I think where there's a consensus for what we need to do in terms of input from the public. So put together a plan and let's present it in open session at the council meeting, and we can kick it around at then. Let's say, maybe the first meeting in July.
Sure.
That might make sense after the budget's all put to bed and the like. So,
No, that's fair. We can put together a rough outline. And then the last thing that I'll mention was to your question or your point about forecasting in the 5-year. And I think we've done some modeling here that sort of plugs in 7 or 8%, at least on the law enforcement side, in outer years. And those are unknown, but that's what we've experienced in the last 24 months. If those escalators, drop to 5% or less, our 5-year picture gets a heck of a lot better. I'll just tell you guys that. So we know there's between 5 and 8% is what we can't absorb. And then if there's a desire to add headcount, anything less than that is going to be some additional capacity for us. So I just wanted to make sure that.
And let's remember too, although our responsibility certainly is to our citizens and our budget, we're healthier than most.
Oh,
yeah.
heavens,
And
yes.
with the total of 17 contract agencies, who can withstand it the way we can? Probably none of them, maybe one or two.
And we're very fortunate. This discussion's happening on a much
yeah,
severe.
So I agree.
Some cities couldn't afford this year.
You know, this has been a great discussion, and we've needed to have it. We kind of got away from the budgets themselves in this discussion and into the more of a philosophical discussion at the 5-year again. Very important, and I'm glad we have. Before we sew it up, though, I did want to address the comments by Ms. Parker concerning Komen and the recommendation that Marion and I have made.
Before you do it, Mr. Mayor, can I just interject one quick thing? You know, with the senior master plan that we're proposing and that I've put forward, I like the idea that we're working with city staff directly and that it's sort of a city-driven process because it remains budget neutral. And that was important to me that, you know, and not to undermine the importance of it. I think we have considerable talent within the city that should be able to support, I think, a high-quality product. And really, you know, and I mentioned this to the city staff as well, as I'm willing to volunteer my time to help facilitate that process in the public forum and so forth. And I'd like to make sure that, you know, as we discuss this public outreach with regard to community services and public safety in particular, that we try and maintain, obviously, we're dealing with budget, you know, shortfalls potentially into the future, that we maintain some fiscal, you know, conservancy on that as well. But then one last thing from a public works perspective, you know, what I'd like to also have the city look at is in the lighting at the Temecula Theater. I think was a wonderful example. You know, yes, the investment up front is considerable, but in the long run, the savings to the city from, you know, just sort of a utilities perspective and electric costs, you know, the system pays for itself, and then ultimately, hopefully, would save the city money. And so I'd like to see from just a municipal utilities side to look at our electrical and water issues, utilities in general, and do an audit of some sort. And I know we've done this in the past, but to identify those areas where, you know, we could invest now into seeing savings, you know, and depending on the return of investment into the future. And I'll give the example that there's a project we had helped with in the Philippines, and their big issue was municipal lighting, and mostly for security reasons. And they have an unstable electrical grid there, and so they had transitioned over to electrical lighting systems, street lights that were powered by solar, were LED, and then had this little wind-powered generator on the top as well for when, you know, it was cloudy out. And at this point, the you know, community has basically off the grid and paid for electricity. It's no longer a cost to them, and the system's, you know, projected to last roughly 20 years. And so now they're reaping all the benefits of saving all of that money they would have been paying in utility costs. And so I'd like to see that, you know, as a potential option, because if we start thinking about those investments in capital projects now, that as we move toward that 5-year, you know, depending on how things go with measures and all the other things that we're talking about, that's still another way of starting to shrink our outgoing costs and maybe shuffling more of that funding toward community services and public safety.
Thanks, Matt. They're all good ideas. And, you know, probably 15 or 20 years ago, I kind of tongue-in-cheek made the suggestion that we look at our larger parks and consider leasing space in them to McDonald's, to build a McDonald's in the parks. It seemed to be a great model. And predictably, a lot of people laughed at me. And I don't blame them. I kind of laughed at myself. But you know what? I'm not advocating we do that now, but that kind of creativity in thought, you know, we talk a lot in management from various circles, and we all interact with a lot of people about what are our currencies. You know, what are our real strengths? What do we have in terms of assets? One of the things we have is a lot of parkland, and we use it as parks, as we should. But is there a way to monetize some of that? And, you know, it's an out-of-the-box discussion, but it's a worthy discussion. Or other properties that we may have. I know we're talking about that now. We had a discussion yesterday about some of that on one of our properties. We don't own many, but we own a few. So anyway, I appreciate that discussion. I think that's
Mr.
pretty
Mayor,
good.
if I could, let's emphasize that this is a positive thing that we're
Oh,
doing.
absolutely.
I mean, it's a very positive thing, even though it sounds dire. The cities that didn't have these conversations are the cities that, you know, are not gonna survive,
It's-
so,
It's only dire if we don't do anything about it.
correct.
And I'd like to think we're all, well, I know, we're all smarter than that, everybody here, so. Anyway, back to the operating budget, and I really didn't want to let the discussion go by concerning Race with the Cure, because I know that we had made a different recommendation this year than in years past. And I'll say, you know, part of that is because Marianne and I are new to that subcommittee this year. A lot of changes on the council, and so we took over. That's just a different pair of eyes, and so really getting into the application that Coleman submitted, and I have it here because I wanted to look at it again this morning in preparation for this discussion. I appreciate what Ms. Parker said very much. Susan G. Komen is a wonderful organization, and I don't want it to be thought of that any of us are saying any different. And the contributions that that group has made and is making to mostly the women, but in some cases men also, that are in need in terms of breast cancer are enormous and very much appreciated. But that doesn't mean that we don't look at our funding in the way we should look at it, whether it's a great organization or not. And our charge here, and you know, I've been ringing this bell from the first day I was elected. Our charge is the city of Temecula. That's our responsibility. We have meetings like this all the time, and we spend our citizens' money. Where do we spend it? And I think, just for me, that it's our obligation, and always has been, to spend Temecula's money in and for Temecula. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not some overlap now and then, that we provide a grant somewhere and somebody from Murrieta comes in and gets services. I don't care about that. They're getting services, that's fine. Maybe 95% of a particular grant is Temecula. But in this case, I really think we have to look at it. No one is saying we shouldn't fund support services for the Race for the Cure. It's a wonderful event. It fulfills our economic development criteria by funding those costs. Beyond that, we're being asked to supply a cash award by Susan G. Komen's own application. 75% is going to the public in their service area. And their service area, as we heard just before, is all of the Inland Empire. City of Temecula represents somewhere around 2.5% of the population of the Inland Empire. 2.5%. So is it logical for us to take $22,500 of our citizens' money and see maybe the need is greater here? Maybe it's the differential is not 97.5%. Maybe it's 80%. Maybe it's 70% that goes outside the area. But it's an awful lot. And that's of the 75% that's coming off anyway. So what's our option if we want to support breast cancer in this community? Seems very clear to me. It's take that $22,000 and write a check to whether it's Michelle's Place or if there are other local organizations that are identified that provide services right here in Temecula. And then we're getting 100% bang for the buck with our own residents' money for our own residents, as opposed to 75% being divided in a very small piece that comes back to Temecula. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Yes, I want to support breast cancer research. I want to support victims of breast cancer 100%. But I want to support those here. That's our responsibility, first and foremost. And so I want to make it very clear that that's the genesis of that recommendation. And if we need to have a discussion, let's have it. And if we all disagree, let's disagree and talk about it. But it just seemed to me that it became crystal clear that the money needs to come here. And you know, in the discussions with, and I'm sorry, Ms. Parker, I don't mean to argue with you, but she left. But she sent an email to us as we were going through this discussion, and she said that I don't think we, as Temecula, understand that this is not the Temecula Race for the Cure, it's the Inland Empire Race for the Cure held in Temecula. Well, that's my point. So we think alike and they think alike, but I'm not sure why we need to send that money out of our community.
Well,
So, yeah.
another point is that the city council has made it a policy as long as I can remember. And before I was on the council, I wrote grants, you know, for the Assistance League and other organizations. And the city always had a policy that they did not fund pass-through money. In other words, I'm not going to give money to ABC nonprofit just so they can turn around and in their name give it to another nonprofit or, you know, give it out in scholarships. If we're going to do that, the city will directly give that money out in scholarships or to the ultimate nonprofit. So the way the application looked, it did make it appear as though the 22,500 was just going to be passed on to other nonprofits, and that would make it a pass-through. And so we've had a policy not to do that. And of course, the Race for the Cure has been tremendous for the city. It's a great economic development tool. It brings people from all over the region and from out of state, Arizona and the states, you know, to the north. But again, how much money are we spending on the support costs?
It's estimated about $18,000 in support costs for the race.
So that's police, fire, paramedics, ambulance, public works setting up. There's a lot of setup with the cones and the roadblocks and all of that. So they're getting $18,000 worth of public safety support and staffing support for the event. So, and that's not small at a time when CDBG funds are limited or grant funds are limited. So I think we need to maintain that same policy about the pass-through. And I agree with Mayor Comachero that it is a huge area that they fund. And I know from experience the several organizations that they fund, and those nonprofits do operate throughout the Inland Empire. And I'm not even sure that, other than Michelle's Place, I'm not even sure who's in Temecula. So we can choose to fund Michelle's Place if we choose.
Let's keep in mind too, in looking at their application, you know, the proceeds of the Race for the Cure is somewhere close to $1 million. I mean, it's not like if we don't give them cash, they can't operate, you know. So,
Right.
Anyway, I hate to bring it up. I hated to make the recommendation, but I think we're all trying to be responsible here in the way we go about dispensing our funds. Matt, did you have something?
Yeah, just curious. I mean, if they're so without this grant, would the event still continue in the city?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, because they get the public support. That's
Right.
probably the most important thing that they can do,
Okay.
that we can provide to them.
Mike?
Couple of things, one related and just one cleanup item. I know this came on our radar screen on the Coleman, which I
I know.
totally
Mhm.
support where you're going with this. Now, the speaker mentioned that no salaries are going there, but it came on our radar screen about a year and a half ago that the CEO of Coleman was making $900,000 a month and
A year.
a year, and that became a real concern that, you know, we were
I
helping
was gonna
to
say,
fund
wow.
salaries, and, you know, far be it from us to tell somebody what they can make, but, you know, we'd just like to get our money in the hands of local nonprofits. That's all our mission. That really is. So, if I may shift gears real quick again, we've had a deep discussion about many things, so this will seem minuscule, but you mentioned Old Town parking, and you know what? And we've reshuffled committee assignments, and I'm not certain if I'm on the committee. Okay?
No, you can't.
So I may say something, you know, that we need to do something.
Go ahead.
I'm on the committee
Go
that's
ahead.
supposed to
In
do it,
open
but
session, you can say
Yeah.
anything you want.
but maybe we're looking for parking solutions. Maybe we start looking at a shuttle in the San Diego lot as a permanent solution. You know, it seems to be a low impact use, and maybe we just enforce some requirement where parking occurs there and that people are shuttled here in Old Town, or something of that nature.
You know, Mike, I think that may be a little further down the road if we're going to institute a shuttle, and Aaron and I had, well, on staff, we had this conversation yesterday. The Stampede parking lot, other than Fridays and Saturday nights or when they have events there, goes virtually unused, and that's huge.
Sure.
And so I think the first step, if we're going to do a shuttle, and I'd like to see that, is to shuttle people here locally into Old Town to
Are we
use their,
waiting-
even our building here.
Are we waiting for the KMA study on Old Town issues?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're just a few weeks away from having a draft that we can present, and I think you are on the subcommittee,
Yeah.
that we will, we
I
will
don't know
be,
who serves with you.
we will be
Good
sharing,
instincts, anyway.
KMA's findings there, and I think what we're gonna uncover here is we may not have the parking shortage that we hear about a lot. We have a convenient parking shortage, and so that, and there's a science to parking, and I'm not a parking expert by any means. So one of our next steps may include, drilling down further on with a parking expert to sort of set up a long-range plan for the city to consider on the heels of KMA.
Mike,
In reference to
we're
this,
gonna have to start referring to you as the Union of Mikes over here.
I can go by Mac.
M&M's good.
Okay, Mike.
In reference to the Susan G. Coleman, I concur. It's for a great cause, for a great benefit. A lot of people benefit from it, spouses, husbands, and families also. But at the same time, as we go through this budget workshop and we try to find creative ways to keep our excellent, fire department going and our two-man in, two-man out fire thing, I think it's important that we educate the public while we're not doing it. So I thought you explained that quite well. We're trying to be budget conscious, and our contribution goes towards something 100% instead of maybe this and maybe that. So it is a great cause. I will be there myself with a T-shirt on, walking and support the cause. But as far as city leaders, I think we're making the right choice by giving the money to Temecula, where we understand Temecula's going to benefit from it. So I concur. Our first priority is the citizens of Temecula, first and last. So.
Thanks, Matt. Any other conversations on any of the topics? Boy, we've hit on a lot of things this morning, much more intense budget discussion than we've had in the past.
Could you clarify on the big topic regarding budget, moving forward, et cetera, our direction to staff today? Could you maybe encapsulate what we've talked about?
Are we talking about the budget as presented or the 5-year?
The 5-year.
Yeah, well, it's, I mentioned Aaron, if he can come back with a plan over the next 30, 60 days to encapsulate the discussion we've had here and to look at next steps. That, whether it's survey, whether it's community outreach programs, whether it's bringing a third party on board, those are the options. And it may be all of them. Then that's what we're looking at. So
Okay.
beyond that, if you have any ideas beyond that, shoot them off to Aaron to make sure he includes in that, by all means do so.
Yeah, and I think for the meeting of June 9th, actually, we can put together a rough proposal for a plan of action as it relates to this discussion today, and then bring something more refined in 30 days too.
That would be great. I just want to be a little bit careful, knowing that that's a very full agenda.
Sure.
As it always is this time of year,
Okay.
because we could have this discussion for hours and hours. I don't mind doing that. It's certainly worthwhile, but it may be better when we have more time to do it,
Okay.
so we don't get too late into the night and then we lose the public, and sometimes we lose our own sleep and we don't make good decisions. So anyway.
Can I ask, I just need to confirm on the Komen direction, just to clarify how we're programming that 22.5.
The recommendation from the subcommittee is to fund support services and to contribute the $22,000 locally. I don't know what the mechanism needs to be there. I understand your question.
Yeah.
So I think you need to figure that out. I know we can put it into community services funding, but we have a $5,000 cap on that. I don't know that we want to make an exception there. So I'm not sure what the mechanism is.
Maybe what we can do is, we know there is at least one local nonprofit that does breast cancer research and
Right.
support services, Michelle's Place. If there's others, maybe we'll research that and then come up with a recommendation to bring back to the council based on that 22.5 split. And if there's only one, then is it the recommendation to provide it to Michelle's Place?
It is, as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to see if there were more that everybody gets a piece, but one of the things we might want to look at is to create a monster, but to create an additional grant program similar to the TCSD funding that is a cancer-related, funded with 22.5. And we come back with a recommendation.
I wouldn't probably.
You wouldn't do that? Why not?
No. Well, I think you're gonna create that extra layer of staffing and everything when we know that there really aren't that many agencies that deal with it in Temecula.
Well, but there could be. I hate to get locked in, you know, and what we do one year, you hate to kind of then say, let's do something, you know, different next year in terms of policy, and then we can.
Well, I mean, we could
Yeah,
open
you
it
know.
up right now for that funding.
This,
Well, what if we just made it an offshoot of TCSD and had it be a separate pot?
this was set up and designed as economic development
Yeah.
sponsorship
Right.
money,
It's not
right?
CDBG or.
So, I mean, if there isn't a nexus to economic development, which I think we've moved
Mhm.
away from, with the exception of the $18,000 in
Right.
support costs for the erase, maybe we need to reprogram those dollars into community services or in a line item for more of a social service grant, like you would pledge to SAFE or
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
to
or
that
you could-
nature.
Yeah,
Combine it
you
with
know,
CDBG.
But it wouldn't be an economic development
right.
recommendation at that point.
Without sounding rude, that's your job. I mean, you know, I think we're clear on what the policy should be. Just find the right mechanism, certainly a legal mechanism.
CDBG comes up in the,
you know.
early fall and,
Yeah, maybe it's tied to that, or, you know, I know it's a different pot, but maybe the process are just tied together. So I'm sure there are a number of different ways to handle it. Just come up with the one you feel most comfortable with, and we know what the objective is. Okay? Yeah.
And just for clarity, if there's no objection with my colleagues, at some point in the future, at an appropriate time, I do want to discuss our TCSD sponsorship issue. Let's get that back and just have that discussion.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, with that, what's on the table then would be a motion to approve the draft operating budgets, several of them, and bring them forward to the council for consideration in regular session.
Motion.
We
Second.
have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously, and that concludes our budget workshop. So once
Great
again,
job,
thanks to everybody.
Oh, my
What a great
gosh.
discussion.
Made that user-friendly, thank you.
When you even look at this,
The beginning of many,
the other thing we need to do is
And we make some comments about
when we discuss this again,
expenses.
fascinating,
Guys,
fascinating,
guys,
fascinating.